there's a lot that we can do to impact and mitigate the effect of chronic stressors on our health and our well-being. And I'm just gonna put this slide up there to say it's another science slide, just to say that we know what happens, but things like social support, high-quality nurturant caregiving, mindfulness, healthy sleep, exercise, all of these things reduce stress hormones, reduce inflammation, enhance neuroplasticity, which is the ability of a brain cell to make a connection to another brain cell, right? All of these things are healing. So there's lots of, journals and research studies and publications and all that stuff, but essentially it boils down to sleep, exercise, nutrition, mindfulness, mental health, healthy relationships, and time in nature. All of these things literally biologically counteract the toxic stress response, and it leads to better outcomes. So I'm going to show you an example of something. It's from, it's related to interventions that happen in kids, but the same impact happens in adults. So you heard me say that for people who have 4 or more ACEs, they're at much greater risk of having negative health outcomes as compared to people with 0 ACEs. So in this slide, 0 ACEs is the lovely blue-green aquamarine color. 4 or more ACEs is the orange color. And we looked at 2 outcomes. These are mental health and behavioral outcomes, but this particular study that was done in the UK, they also had this for health outcomes as well, very similar data. And we see more ACEs, greater risk. But then, for those individuals who received all of the buffering care interventions that I'm talking about, these are their outcomes, those lighter shaded outcomes. So I just want to point out 2 things. First of all, let's look at the orange bars for a second. For those individuals who had 4 or more ACEs, but received all of the buffering care supports, their outcomes are almost the same as people with 0 ACEs. That's buck wild, right? But the other second part of it, which I love, is that for those people with 0 ACEs who all got all of these buffering care interventions, even they did better too. So that's always nice. That makes me feel good. But the point is that the evidence is clear. Safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and environments, wraparound services, meeting people where they're at, acknowledging, seeing them, recognizing their culture, recognizing their history, recognizing their value is not only improves health outcomes, mental health outcomes, behavioral health outcomes, but in many cases, and often cases that we don't even know, it's life-saving. So as I stepped into the role as California's first Surgeon General. This was a very low-stress gig that I had over the past 3 years. But one of the things that we did was actually to bring this literature and research into practice, and we intentionally try to engage with communities to do something called networks of care. Interdisciplinary groups of folks doing healthcare, education, human service professionals, community members, right? Because we know that when individuals get these multidisciplinary services, and particularly partner with other organizations to do that, that we get better outcomes. I'm telling y'all, today, when I went to Plymouth, this is exactly what I saw. It was housing, right? Housing with case management, mental health services, healthcare services, culturally responsive and celebratory care. And you saw the difference, right? I saw the difference when I met residents. Best practices in trauma-informed systems is all of this stuff that we've been talking about and hearing about today. Safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and environment. Arming people with the information to understand about rather than what's wrong with them, what happened to them. And the fact that there's a lot that we can do about it. Implementing trauma-sensitive and trauma-informed practices and policies, coordinating and co-locating services, right? By the way, I did these slides before I did my tour this morning, right? So these are all of the best practices. And providing linguistically and culturally inclusive social supports. Now, in my role as Surgeon General, when I was making the case in California to say, these are best practices and we have to do them, of course, the first backlash is, well, that all sounds very well and good, Dr. Burke Harris, but how are we going to pay for it? How can we possibly afford it? That sounds really expensive. For the state of California, right, the annual cost of ACEs for the state of California is $112.5 billion. Billion with a B, dollars. Okay? That's over $1 trillion in 10 years. And as we heard today, that the cost of housing someone is less than the cost of keeping them on the streets, right? The cost of addressing ACEs is less than the cost of not addressing ACEs. That's how we got resources to do it in California, right? And so when we're thinking about the investments, thinking about doing this work and doing it well and doing it in a way that is evidence-based, we cannot afford not to do it. But I'm going to say, as someone who has worked in government is terrible at funding innovation, right? I just admit, we're great at scaling things, we're great at, but we're not so hot at figuring out how to advance care and how to move things forward on the cutting edge. And we have to. And I'm going to tell you, you guys, we can do this. In fact, Plymouth Housing is doing it with some of the most innovative and best practices that I have seen. And the good news is, right, for all of the big challenges that we are facing today, and I don't know how y'all are feeling, but I think for myself, it feels like there are some big challenges that we are facing. But the good news is that we don't need to boil the ocean. We just need to play our position, right? Someone said that to me a while ago. I was trying to figure out, gosh, we have all these big things that we're struggling with. We say, hey, you know what? You don't have to do everything. You just have to play your position, right? And for some, the position is as a case manager or a resource worker. For some, it's in leadership. For some, it's part of being part of the mental health team. But for most of the people in the room, playing your position means supporting this work, right? Providing the resources that are necessary so that the teams that are on the front lines can do the excellent and innovative work that we know improves outcomes. And as we talk about doing this work, as we talk about how we can all be part of the solution, I just want to remind everyone that we need to put our own oxygen mask on first. So when I'm talking about ACEs, right, undoubtedly I'm talking about many, if not the majority, of clients that Plymouth serves. But I'm not just talking about them. I know that many of us in this room have our own experiences. ACE is not just in certain communities and certain zip codes, right? It's all of us. And so when we think about it, right, recognizing that as we move forward, as we go forward to not only support this work, but be partners in the long haul, it also includes doing that self-care, applying this same science for ourselves, because I don't know about y'all, but right around summer of 2020, I don't know how many people were feeling like, it used to be that I had a glass of wine at dinner, and somehow it's morphed into 2.5 glasses of wine at dinner, right? That's your stress response. That's the cortisol working, right? So really, this is all of us. And as we think about the impact of the pandemic, as we think about all the changes that are happening in this world, as we think about all the things that we are struggling with as a community, it's clear that the time is now. There has never been a more important time to be investing in trauma-informed systems and practices, in the best practices of co-locating services, meeting people where they are, honoring their humanity, recognizing the root causes, so that we can get to that transformative change that makes the difference for every person.